सिद्धि खरी शुद्धि श्री दुर्गा देवी नमोस्तुते शंख चक्र गदा
Oh, welcome, welcome, friends. Sangha, good to see you all. If you're comfortable, please turn on your camera just so we can see us all who are here gathered in this already wonderful space set, the tone of which was set by Kritee's gorgeous chant. So, welcome, welcome. This is an EcoDharma exploration from Wonder Sangha, and our guest today is Kritee Kanko, and I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, my name is Kristen Barker. I'm the director and co-founder of Wonder Sangha. If I haven't met you before, especially if I haven't met you before, welcome, welcome, welcome. And to all the people who come regularly or even occasionally, it's wonderful to have you here. So I'm coming to you from the Potomac watershed of on Turtle Island, United States, also known as Washington, D.C., a pretty intense place these days, as you might imagine. And I spent the morning doing a stream cleanup with people from my Sangha, which was quite wonderful because the spirit of protection was very much alive. So I was just very much with that forest, and so that's the ecological relative that I want to name is the whole riparian corridor that we were inside of this stream stretch, and it just felt wonderful to be doing some service with them. And then the Dharma ancestor that I want to name is once again I go back to Ajahn Shah, who is an ancestor through the Thai forest tradition, who informed so much of my lineage. So grateful to the ecological relative and my Dharma ancestor. Yeah, I think the last thing I want to do is emphasize that we're inside of a partnership right now that we're really happy about, which is with Braided Wisdom, an organization in Northern California that primarily works with Indigenous folks, but very much coming from an Indigenous lens on mindfulness and on Buddhist practices. So that's currently ongoing, and then also with Spirit Rock in their EcoDharma Transformational Culture program. So we're happy to be in partnership with them. And so in the next couple of months, you're going to see actually a different host for these, for those of you who come to these often, and on and off again throughout the rest of this year. So with that, we can now move into our featured guest here and the conversation that we're going to have together with Kritee Kanko. So I have known Kritee since I want to say 2013, something like that, when we met at the Natural Dharma Fellowships Retreat Center in New Hampshire. It's called Wonderwell. And yeah, it was an Eco Dharma conference, and it was just absolutely pivotal in the life of One Sangha, and certainly for me in this network. And one of the big highlights of that was meeting Kritee, and we have stayed friends. She is so dear to me that I'm just going to get verklempt over here. I'm just going to get misty if I go too much into it. But I absolutely love our friendship and Kritee herself for the bravery, for the wisdom, for the sense of a calling that she brings to all of us here who tend to have a scope of concern that is limited to this one. And while it begins with this one, it so doesn't end there. And Kritee is a constant reminder for so many of us who can fall prey to the preoccupation with self, the self cherishing. I think Buddhism talks about self cherishing. And while we need to love ourselves, idealizing and worshiping ourselves is a deep concern. So I'm just thrilled. I'm just thrilled that you said yes, Kritee, again. I never take it for granted because I know you're so busy these days. So welcome, 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 dear one. And I'll hand it over to you.
Oh, thank you, dear one. That felt like, were you talking about me? I love you back and welcome everyone. Um, I want to start by invoking all of our lineages and ancestors. So if you would all join me, we'll do guided practice a little bit later. But if it feels safe, to please close your eyes. You can keep them open if you like. And just straighten your spine, elongate your spine, and join me in calling in your wisest, kindest elders, teachers, guides, ancestors. You're not looking for perfection, not at all, but just the tenderness that you might out here, the spirit world, the animal world, the plant world. The chant that you were hearing when you first came in, some of you joined earlier, was a chant in honor of Durga or Kali. Kali and Durga are not same, but in some lineages, they have deep relationship. I want to call in both the fierce as well as the gentle form of Guanyin and Tara. So on the screen, if you can open your eyes for a second, is Guanyin. That's like the gentle form of the divine feminine. Yeah. And the version of Guanyin that I absolutely love is from city of Leshan in China, where you can really see her 1,000 hands reaching out to help and deep compassion. We are more familiar with this gentler form of divine feminine or Durga in the West. What we have not acknowledged enough, according to me, is the fierce form of Tara. This is from Tara Mandala community in Colorado. And I want to share with you the form of divine feminine, Durga, that I personally love. Hey, Kali. You know, these times call for just a lot of fierceness, authenticity. And here she is, naked, raw, authentic. Like, I learned so much from her. Every time I evoke her, I get teary-eyed and I find my clarity. And I just wanted to evoke her. So, dear ones, there is so much I want to talk about, but I'm going to start chanting a tiny bit. And I invite you to just listen with your eyes closed or open, whatever works for you. There are 3 words: peace, salam, which is peace in Arabic, and shalom, which is peace in Hebrew. I don't need to explain why we would do that at this time. Yeah. And please just tune into it, whatever way works for you. I would be drumming a bit and singing. And this is not for you. This is my own practice these days to get into an attuned state of mind where I am coherent spiritually. Okay? Please indulge me for a bit.
Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, shalom. Peace, salam, peace.
I like to slow it down, and I hope you feel landed in this space. I cannot see you, I cannot smell you. I would love emojis going forward. If you hear something that feels right, in the react thing, there is, you can send love signs, thumbs up. Yeah? Can we do that? So I want to start with just acknowledging some of you probably attended Kazuhaga's exploration last time, or you've heard me before, or have explored this topic on your own. I'm going to share some numbers that will feel like I'm making people who go through it a statistic, but I want to always start with acknowledging the scale of individual and collective pain we all go through. 1 in 3 kids in America have faced domestic violence. 1 in 5 were sexually abused within their families. 1 in 4 had close relatives who were alcoholic. They spent their childhood getting, becoming big, becoming beings who had to take care of older people. So in all, 60% of people in any space, including this one, have gone through what is called childhood adverse experiences. You heard that term before? Yeah. So whatever we do in any space, and Kazu spoke about all of this in his beautiful way, just working with trauma is just a basic given. Yeah. I would love to get in the chat just a few reactions. Was this number surprising for you that 60% of people in a given room have adverse childhood circumstances or experiences that obviously come from the larger societal, cultural, intergenerational trauma? Is that a surprise? 60% number? Yes, no. In the chat, please. We'd be using chat a lot. Not a surprise, not a surprise, not at all surprising. Yep. One person says it's a surprise for them. Thank you. So, what does that mean? Whether you've heard others speak about implications of trauma or not, what does that mean for our quest for justice, peace, democracy? Short phrases, again in the chat. What comes up? What does hurt people hurt people? Perfect, yes. We are all in pain. So, yes, thank you. Yes. Oh, beautiful. Healing of ourselves needs to happen hand in hand with healing the collective. Perfect. You guys are on it. Yes, we can pause here. Thank you. I think we are with this. So I will tie the threads together later on, but I'm going to keep asking you a series of questions and then we'll bundle it up together, hopefully. What do you think polycrisis means? What does polycrisis mean to you? This word is thrown around a lot by lots of people these days. What do you know about that phrase? What does that mean for you? Again, short phrases. Many crises at once, interconnected issues, many layers of trauma. Yes, all of that. Yep. Yep. Late stage capitalism, climate, authoritarianism. Perfect. Disaster on all sides. Yes. So there is Ukraine, Russia, there is Palestine, Israel, now Iran, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Not blah, blah, blah. They are all serious things. Yes. Okay. We can take a pause here. The word polycrisis, and I'll send you history documents. I'll send you an article that chronicles that history. This word polycrisis was created in 1990s by European scholars for Europeans. It's extremely Eurocentric. It has been. Okay. It became very popular during COVID when Europeans were feeling like, oh, these migrants are coming to our shores. Russia and Ukraine have their, gory violence going on, and our markets are wobbly. They defined the polycrisis for themselves in many mainstream organizations, United Nations, G7, all of these big policy nerd organizations just started, oh, we are in polycrisis, we are in polycrisis. But, they were missing three crucial components. When I looked at polycrisis word, it's like, what the heck? Polycrisis is missing these things? These are the basement things for polycrisis. First one we just named, enormous deep layers of trauma. Like, if we don't acknowledge trauma as a part of polycrisis, we are missing it. And you all know it, but it wasn't how polycrisis was defined. The second thing it was missing was mention of race. There was zero mention of race and caste and class because it was European nerds, policy nerds, defining it for themselves. Yes? And then there was something even deeper for me, right? Which has become like increasingly crucial, is that it didn't name this primordial wound of colonization. What happened because of starting with divine right of kings, manifest destiny, doctrine of discovery. If these words don't mean much for you, very quickly, divine right of kings is saying kings can do whatever they want. This is like 13th, 14th century thing, right? Doctrine of discovery said, if you are a Christian ruler, if Christians don't exist in a given place, you can go conquer it. No one lived there, right? It's still happening. If certain set of people don't live there, this was a land of no one. Yes? And manifest destiny is that, oh my God, United States, you are you are you are a nation of God's chosen people. You can take over Mexico, you can take over Texas. Just keep going. We can use the Gulf of Mexico to be Gulf of America now, right? Okay. So, are you with me now on polycrisis? This was just on polycrisis. Now let's move into why is this thing called colonization, stealing of land and bodies? What has that really got to do with climate crisis? Like, let's go deep. I'm gonna come at it indirectly. Please tell me in the chat, again, 5 to 7 words, who created Amazon rainforest? How was Amazon rainforest, which is called the lung of the planet, created? the sun, the Gaia. Yes. Okay, Choran, your answer doesn't count. You've heard me before. All right. Yeah. Well, for, yeah, 3.8 years of evolution. All right. All right, let's pause. So you saw yeah, Amazon rainforest, my dear ones who think that Gaia created it, natural processes created it. Of course, there must be something to begin with on which indigenous tribes work. But Amazon rainforest, the lung of the planet, was carefully created over decades and centuries by tens, maybe hundreds of indigenous tribes living in South America. If you hear nothing else from this conversation today, please don't ever forget that. Are you with me? Okay. How did they create it? I'll go into the physical, scientific stuff first, and then I'll get to the spiritual stuff, which is very important. They created Amazon rainforest first by building extremely fertile soil called terra preta. It's called dark earth. It was dark because it has so much organic matter that it looks dark. You know how there are dark, rich soils that look like chocolate cake? That kind of soil. And how did they create that soil? They buried organic material very, very carefully, over decades. They even buried pottery. They knew what kind of pottery material, when buried for extended period of time, would create this extremely rich, fertile soil. You with me? And then, after creating the soil, they also planted just enormous kinds of seeds there purposely. The background of the Amazon area didn't have these tree species. That was ancient agroforestry. Okay? All right. Now, for me, the spiritual question is even more important than what they actually did in physical, visible realms. And if any of you here are, I forgot to tell you how I came into this work. If anyone here has indigenous lineages in your bones and blood, I'm talking about your people. Please forgive me. I might generalize things. I know there is a lot of complexity, but I came to this work because I was invited by people protecting Aravali forest, one of the oldest forest and mountain systems in India, to work with Bhil tribe. And they asked me, please create a narrative so we can do the work we have to do. The tribal leaders said, please put your scientific hat and help us talk about these things. So I am here channeling their needs. Yeah. Okay. So this how on earth did these tribes know what to put in the soil to create such a fertile system, right? How did they know which seeds will do well? They didn't have modern scientists, the PhD degrees, the Western education system. It was a very different way of perceiving and receiving and listening to the world. My friend Marga is here. I'll give an example of Polynesian tribes that she spoke about beautifully one time, but they heard from the plant world. It's like the famous herbalist Stephen Bonner. Anyone here heard about Stephen Bonner? He's written a lot around Lyme disease. He has a book called Secret Life of Plants. If you haven't seen it, please pick it up. He's just talking about how when we slow down and how we can open our heart, right? The little brain that is in our heart, that you can receive direct transmission from the plants. I don't think the Amazonian tribes or any other tribes who were empowered uh, to take care of their ecosystems went on a linear journey of testing a hypothesis, saying yes or no, right? How many of you here have scientific degrees or courses you've done? The linear, that wasn't, I'm trying to say that wasn't linear process the way modern education works. So, indigenous spiritualities were key to indigenous ability to be what I call keystone species of their ecosystem. Okay. What is a keystone species? Again in the chat. Yes, Philip, one of the reasons for Amazon deforestation is animal agriculture. Totally. What is a keystone species? What comes up when I mention that word? Again in the chat, what comes up for you? Makes food and home for all, species that ties together the ecosystem. Yes, beavers. Yes. Foundational species, building blocks. Yes. We can take a pause. Yes. Keystone species is a species in an ecosystem. It is not the largest, biggest predator. It is the species that if you take that species out of an ecosystem, the whole system would come to a collapse. Other species will stop thriving, right? Beaver is a sweetest, beautiful example. Beaver in their own play, in their own behavior will fall down, trees will come down and they'll create a pond and they'll play there. But in the process, they create habitat for fish, which would otherwise not be there. Yes? They would create habitat for insects and birds. And you take out beavers, our Colorado watersheds, if it's just drastically different where you have beaver versus not. And Lela June was the first person who spoke about this when I heard it from her, that empowered indigenous tribes. Please understand the key word here, empowered. When they have their agency, their land, their spiritualities, and their languages intact, they are keystone species of their ecosystems. I get teary-eyed every time I say it, but Lela June, when she told me, I was crying for a while. She said, our people, our ancient people, had treaties with Bear Nation and Oyster Nation. We are not just looking at thriving of different class, caste, races. It's like the kin-centricism. If you hear of indigenous leaders, they always say relatives, my relatives. The tree is also relative. Bear is also relative. Salmon is also relative. Yeah. So you take it. So that's keystone species. Okay. What comes up for you? Next question. What comes up for you when I use the word systems thinking? Feedback network. Yeah. Big picture. Joanna Macy, that's fair. Joanna Macy has talked beautifully about systems thinking. Interconnections, non-reductive. Wonderful. The way I think about systems thinking, I had my own definitions before I started studying indigenous knowledge systems. But I am a climate scientist, and I came to climate science from a very narrow perspective. I was looking specifically at agriculture, like what are the impacts of agriculture on climate. And within that, I was looking at very narrow set of questions, which I won't get into. They honestly aren't super exciting to me, even though I published lots of papers on those things. What I'm trying to say is that even within that field of agriculture, I knew about a very narrow set of questions. If I had questions about water cycle as opposed to greenhouse gases, right? If I had questions about fire cycle, if I had questions about seeds and the actual act of growing food, I had to talk to other experts. You with me? We needed like a conference of 200 people come together. We'll work on this village in India and we'll be like so cool. Yeah. And that modern way of understanding things is not just linear, but it's reductionism, right? I always give this example. Some of you've heard me say this 100 times over. You you have a nail that is getting chipped again and again and again, and you go to a doctor, and the doctor says, I don't deal with it. Please go to a hand expert. Hand expert sends you to the finger expert. Finger expert sends you to the nail expert, right? You know that? Reductionism. You with me? Now contrast that with systems level education system of empowered indigenous tribes. Whenever I have looked at any specific tribe and how they teach their young, their teenagers, they are embedded in a local watershed, local ecosystem. Yes? And they study the wind cycle, fire cycle, water cycle, soil issues, bee issues, plants, animals, all in the context of that local ecosystem. They talk about those interrelationships together. They don't need to do 2 PhD degrees to learn about fire and water. It's like it's all taught together. Here are the birds in our ecosystem. Here is what they sound like. Here is how it smells like. This is bear poop, and this is moose poop, and this is mountain lion poop. And when you see these paws, it means this. What I have come to, it's like I carry my own heartbreak. Like we are spending billions killing people right now, right? The war machinery, the resources, energy is being spent on killing people. But here is Mother Earth crying, all the species dwindling. I don't have answers on what to do for Iran, Israel, or Palestine. I feel so helpless. But what I want to chart out in next few minutes is what the heck is our 500-year vision? Like, please understand what I say going forward about indigenous cultures, wisdom, and our reindigenizing. It's not gonna be enough in any significant way for the immediate crisis we are in. I wish I knew how to get rid of fascists, right? But I'm talking about here what kind of world do we want to imagine 500 years from now? I've even stopped saying 200 years. Earlier, those of us who are in Joanna Macy circles, we are used to doing these 7 generation practices. Are you familiar with them? Right? You kind of imagine our descendants 200 years from now. But given where we are, I like to think about 500-year vision. Where would you want to be? Like, what seeds can you and I plant for that to happen? Yeah. And when I think about it, I imagine empowered Indigenous communities. I don't have to explain you why, right? I laid this out for you. I might add a fact here that if you look at relative abundance of multiple species in a given space, one managed by modern man, right? Modernity, and one managed by indigenous, empowered indigenous community, the biodiversity and the carbon in the soil is always more when it's managed by indigenous, empowered indigenous communities. So, if we have to look at longer term biodiversity, looking at climate crisis, and just having a deep way of knowing what do I do? What do I do? What needs to open up in us so we can do what is our individual unique dharma? Let me take a detour here. I closed my eyes and I felt like, oh, Kritee, before you go forward, you have to talk about what do you mean by individual dharma? So we all know dharma, like many of you are Buddhist here. Raise your hand. Buddhist. Okay. We all have Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path. If you are not a Buddhist, you don't have to worry about being a Buddhist. I want to convert no one into Buddhism or EcoDharmaism. There are universal Dharma principles, compassion and wisdom. You can say climate movement has universal principles. Let's all try to decrease our footprint, right? Like eat more simply, vegan diets, fly less, on and on and on, right? And then those of us who work in the collective, let's stop the pipelines, like let's keep the carbon in the ground, in the trees, and let's not burn it. But the question is, what is my dharma? What is my unique dharma? If I am a tree, yeah, if I am a tree, I am rooted in a specific place. Sometimes we are not rooted. That is also a problem, right? Sometimes we are not rooted in any place, any community, any ancestors, any spirit guides. But wherever I am rooted, what is mine to have flow through me? What fruits would I bear? Right? Where am I rooted? What is my unique dharma? In Hinduism or in some tantric Buddhist lineages, we call that as swadharma. Swa means self. What is my unique dharma? So if I am sitting here trying to figure out what is my dharma, or an indigenous community is sitting and trying to figure out what is mine to do, if I take a checklist of pros and cons of any action, that's the linear way of knowing. But the indigenous animist, or may I say shamanic, I say that word shamanic in a very respectful way. Shaman, being a shaman is very, very deep work. Knowing my own dharma also comes from messages from the natural world, from ancestors, and let's say invisible realm. Yeah. So the framework after there is a lot that has churned in me in the last year and a half, the key phrase that I keep coming back to, the larger framework that I keep coming back to, is called Reindigenizing. Okay? And I break it up into several parts. And I have not settled on a single name for this thing that I'm calling Reindigenizing. So, once again, if you have indigenous lineages, my apologies. Please let me finish my whole context. I know that if the context and reverence in my heart is lost, you might feel I'm appropriating. But please let me share with you why I have come to this word. Yeah? One thing we can all agree relatively easily, that ecosystems, lands, watersheds need to be re-indigenized. Yeah? If we bring back people who can communicate with the land, like I have just been talking about it, how much carbon, how much fertility, how much biodiversity can come here. So a fundamental bedrock of re-indigenizing framework that I'm working with is somehow each of us in our capacities, in our unique ways, trying to connect with who were the people who can sing to this land. This is another thing that makes me very emotional. I have a friend, Bianca Costa, who told us once during a retreat that, you know how humans wait for their pets. How many of you have pets or have known pets? Yeah. So human beings can have, not that it's always true, can have a lot of love for their pets. Like my dog, I can talk for hours about my dog. But does the dog also love the human in many cases, at least? Yeah. So we are able to ascribe intelligence and emotion to our dogs. But what my friend Bianca said was, people, Native American tribes or tribal nation people, are waiting to be reunited with their beloved land. Yes? And what makes me emotional is her saying, and the land is also waiting for its people. And that reunion, I'm tearing up now, but that union is a climate policy. It should be a climate policy. Land back is for collective survival. It's not like take pity on people our ancestors did violence towards. The inextricability of climate crisis and indigenous, Afro-Indigenous racial healing, it's just so tight in my view. So that's like the bedrock of whatever I'm going to say next. The question is that people who currently identify as indigenous, well, let's make it a question. What percentage of world's population is indigenous right now? We can go back to chat. What percentage of human population on planet Earth is indigenous right now? Okay, some of you know. Yes. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's close to 5%. Yeah, it's close to 5%. So, what about 95% of us? those of us who have been separated for X number of reasons, whether we had to become refugees, whether we were looking for different opportunities, our ancestors made the choice. What about 95% of people? Okay. And so when I talk about re-indigenizing, I'm looking at what can 95% of us do beyond trying to be allies of Indigenous peoples. I told you, in working with Indigenous peoples, trying to reconnect them and having that union of land and ecosystems with its people is the bedrock here. But what does it mean for 95% of us? Here's where Leila June, just in her brilliance, I will send you the article I'm referring to. She spoke about her indigenous European ancestors. Okay? This is the truth. It took me time to accept it. But everyone who we club under the label of being white Caucasian, right? Way back, all of your ancestors, right, were also keystone species of their local ecosystems and watershed at some point in history. You just can't have survival without that way of knowing and connecting with your ecosystem. The European indigenous ancestors were burnt at stake. When the witch burning happened in Europe, these were herbalists. These were people who spoke to plants and trees and animals and birds. And the number of quote unquote witches that were burnt in Europe, it's not acknowledged, but that number in mainstream narrative is less than 1 million. But it was actually, according to several researchers, was close to 12 million. That makes it bigger than Holocaust. So what does that mean? What does that mean? That we have inherent capacity to return to a different way of being and knowing and learning. Like it's like we have latent genes in our system. Like if we gave ourselves permission to know someone else instead of just words and conversation and visible clues, that I can know someone in a deeper way by singing and drumming to them, or by being in stillness with them. That I can hear the message of a river that has been polluted for decades. That gives me a lot of hope. That latent possibility that our seeds might have gotten hardened, right? That our seeds, that our core that is capable of communicating in those deep ways has gotten hardened by trauma and capitalism and individualism, right? But that if we thaw this soil and we nurture this seed, that there might be possibilities. That gives me great hope. And so when I say re-indigenizing, it's re-indigenizing of our hearts and our minds, right? A lot of us use this word called decolonizing. Let's decolonize. Let's decolonize. You heard that word? But decolonize doesn't do it for me. It's like Decolonize is saying, what am I saying no to? But reindigenizing is saying, what do I want to say yes to? Yeah. I want to say yes to that way of being where river is my relative. The land that are being desecrated right now, bombed in Middle East. Those are sacred lands, not just people lands. Would you sing to them? Like if they are intelligent, alive, sentient beings? Uh, it gives me a pathway to how to be, right? So, one part of re-indigenizing, I'm sorry guys, I'm not very linear, but I hope it's coming together, yes? Uh, Re-indigenizing, I break it up into 4 parts. And if we ever do a longer workshop, we can go into deep depths of it. But one is re-indigenizing of our way, our hearts. Meditation, healing, trauma healing is huge part of that. Yeah. And opening ourselves to the possibility that that way of communication is possible. Um, in the last year, I've had stunning experiences with crows and snakes communicating with me. I cannot give you a logical explanation of how I know when crow makes X kind of sound, something like that might happen to me. So give yourself permission that that's possible. And this is the part where Buddhism, mindfulness teachers might have most skills. Buddhism has ruptured, taken out the shamanic and animistic elements when it came to West. I carry a lot of pain. Buddhism was not what it is in the West. I have investigated Asian Buddhism. It was very animist, right? It yeah. So that's one. The second component that some Buddhist sanghas engage in, but not others very deeply, and we've all EcoDharmas have been teachers have been trying to develop that, is really developing solid human communities. We can indigenize, re-indigenize the way human communities work with each other. My crucial take on it is it's not just people. How do we re-indigenize our communities when community members look like each other, but when they don't have similar backgrounds, income levels, racial makeup? So there is a lot of exploration that I do in my work now on re-indigenizing across difference in our communities. We have lost skills to be in conflict in a way that honors divinity of the person in front of us. And Kazu spoke to it last week a little. So working across difference within human communities is a big part of re-indigenizing framework. The third one, very crucial one, is connecting with our local ecosystems wherever we are right now. I'm talking about the 95% of people who don't identify as indigenous or don't live on our ancestral lands. This goes back to nature practice. We don't go to nature practice just for healing or tourism. I invite each of you to create your own rituals of greeting a tree, of greeting a river, greeting a lake, greeting a dandelion that grows in the crack of parking lot. around you? How do we connect with, are there trees in your street? Some of my indigenous friends, I would take walks with them, and it's like they keep greeting trees. It's not about knowing their species name and what herb they produce or not and how we can use and extract something from them. It's like saying, hey, here is a full being. How are you today, tree? I've developed a practice of just saying, oh, you are so beautiful. Thank you for being in this world. And if we slow down more, there are specific practices for receiving messages from animals and plants. There is an amazing teacher, Penelope Smith, I think her name is, just amazing animal communication classes. Amazing. Okay. Fourth one, which is like probably the most important one. Just to recap what we went through the bedrock, right? Connecting people with their land, working with our own trauma, healing techniques, including Buddhist practices, but not limited to them. Second one, human community across difference. Third one, our local ecosystems, like really getting to know birds. Out for experts, please. Experts are lost, right? The fourth one, this is something Buddhism does partially in the West, but doesn't go all the way. Connecting with invisible realms. And invisible realms for me includes not just what in Buddhism we call shunyata, zeroness, emptiness, right? But ancestors, people who have left this world, physical world, spirits, the Kali, Durga, your archangels, uh, let's call it the spirit world. It's real, folks. That world was culled out of Buddhism when it traveled to the US. For the most part, except for some Tibetan lineages, right? Vajrayana lineages. It's almost like we say that in Buddhism there is form and emptiness. Anyone heard of those two words, form and emptiness? So it's like, yes, there is the emptiness, and then there is form, which is the human form and things humans can see visibly. That's the only kind of form we have made place for. What I'm talking about is invisible forms that exist just like we human beings exist in visible form. Are you with me? It's like saying energy exists, like sunlight exists, but it doesn't look human, but there is energetic patterning there. So our ancestors exist. The spirits and the plants and animals and snakes exist. How will we cultivate relationship with not just other animals and plants in our local ecosystem, but the spirit of the land? We get to have that connection by having humility, curiosity, It's similar to wanting to befriend another human being. We bring our curiosity, mindfulness, compassion, humility. Yeah. One last thing I'll say, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. Uh, to do any of this work, where we all get to start, I feel, is I mean, all of these things are related to each other, but none of us can do this alone. None of us. And my prayer is that all of us find ourselves in a community of 5 to 7 people. I'm a huge fan of that size, that you begin to go explore these questions in great depth. This is hard work. Trauma healing in itself is hard work. Talking about bringing people back to their land, it's daunting. We've been doing that in Colorado. It's taken a decade to bring people back. Relationship building, patience, cross-cultural understanding, respect, it just takes time, but it's possible. Our EcoDharma Center in Colorado is finally bringing back Indigenous tribes off this land after 10 years of work. And it was grueling and messy. Gosh. But it's possible when some people stay with it. So I'm going to invite a pause, and as I'm taking the pause, I'm going to ask Elizabeth to prepare for launching a short poll. The poll is going to ask you about your lineages and ancestry. And I hope that given what I have just talked about, you understand ancestry is important here. Actually, I need to say one more thing. If we connect with the ancestral realms, if you make a prayer, my German, Polish, French, Indian ancestors, whoever they were, back when they were keystone species, back when they were embedded in their ecosystems, if you remember them, they might be wanting to guide you back into your indigeneity in however remote ways. We will never get to become indigenous. I'm not talking here about definition of, like, I hope none of us do that. We don't get to become indigenous. All I'm saying is, can we claim some strands from it by working with our ancestors, right? And I want to end by saying, I'll hand it over to Kristen now. Those of us who are immigrants in US, Canada, Turtle Island, please know that the work of solidarity is extremely crucial. The trauma that has been inflicted on tribal nations is no joke. Like, I just spent last 24 hours with, I will not name them or their tribe, but an indigenous person from one of the largest tribes in United States. And I had to cry last night. I cried this morning because they have lost their language, they have lost their ceremonies, they are under so much trauma, deep addiction, deep, like, the work of trauma healing that needed there is endless. And I ask each of you, whatever you can do, get into the messy process. Our candles will get lit when other candles are lit. If someone else reclaims their indigeneity, it's like the network, and pulls all of us together. So um, both are important, the bedrock and our own work. Thank you so much, everyone. Passing it to my dear friend, Kristen.
Thank you so much, Kritee. Thank you. Yeah. So there's been so many seed casts on the soil here. So just really encourage you to be with the parts that really resonate and something seemed to start to root, and then the places that felt like edgy. It's all fodder for the practice, and being with it as we can, onward leading. I am so interested in these lines of thought that we can explore, not with well, I'll say for myself, the part of my mind that wants to take sides versus, ooh, just letting the uncertainty and the question and the nuance kind of come through and sit and give that a chance to kind of marinate in my system. And so just really encourage you to, if any part of this felt onward leading to you, to really trust that, to trust that. And so to direct you to Elizabeth, are you ready with your links? Uh, to Kritee's website, which I think is kriteekanko.org. Is it? I don't know. Com. Is it com? Really? Wow. I don't know what to do with that. I feel ambivalent about that. And no, I'm sure it's all good. I'm sure it's not for capitalist purposes. Wow, Kritee, we got to talk. So and there are events there are articles there. You can see Kritee in all these different venues. And just to follow her work. And I think we'll try to put that outline, by the way, that 4-part outline, we'll try to include that, Nikayla, maybe on the page, so we can sort of give folks that visual aid for the process of and the elements of reindigenization that Kritee was speaking to. So that. And then to say, yeah, please support Kritee's work, her teaching. Kritee is very much in this tradition of the of Dana as the principal way that she is supported in her teaching, and such a beautiful tradition it is. That this isn't, you didn't have to pay anything. You were invited to donate here, but it's not a fee for service kind of situation, right? So really encourage you to go to her website or follow the links that we'll provide here to support Kritee's work. So yeah. And then to say, it's only because of your generosity and people like you that Winter Sangha continues. So likewise, to support Winter Sangha, things like the Eco-Safa training, which by the way, Kritee has been part of for many years now, and continues to be an essential teacher in that program. So things like the Eco-Safa training, these EcoDharma explorations, all the curation of EcoDharma from around the web, our original pieces, all of that are because of your donation. So welcome your support. And support can look in so many ways. You can give us just your comments. You can volunteer. It's not just financial, right, that you can support us. Okay, next month we have Norma Wong is going to be doing, we're kind of in a Zen moment here, right? We're having another Zen teacher. Norma's, I love this. The title of it is When No Thing Works, right? That is so juicy Zen, right? The ways that we want to collapse and get the thing that works, right? And fix this, be solution oriented. And this invitation to see that no thing will work is so beautifully consistent with the understanding of dukkha, and the way that suffering is created in our minds individually and collectively. So I'm really excited about the space that she's going to be challenging and opening up for us. So join us next month for that. And then I always invite you to subscribe to our mailing list, oneersangha.org/join. If you are not getting our monthly newsletters, which it's like, I love our monthly newsletters. I mostly don't do that work anymore, so it's just an amazing team that does that. So I get to shower them with praise and encourage you to partake of those, which I think are just such a good encapsulation of our work. And then, as I mentioned, the EcoSattva training. So we are uh, always revising the EcoSattva training, updating it with the voices that need to be heard, and integrating the necessary attunement with conditions that we find ourselves. And boy, are there a lot of conditions for us to be adjusting to right now and incorporating into that experience. So really encourage you to check out the EcoSattva training, and maybe think about starting a group, a small group, just as Kritee was saying. Really encourage those small in-person groups to do the training together, and the new one will become available. The first session one will be available the second week in October. All right, and here we are at the end. So before we close with the dedication of merit, just really want to encourage your feedback. For us, anything that you think we can do better here, please let us know. What should we start doing, stop doing, do even more of? Those kinds of things. Always welcome that feedback. And then, as I said, the partnership with Braided Wisdom and Spirit Rock. We're doing this together, so we all want to serve you better in this. And so this helps us improve our programming, but it honestly helps us remind us that people are invested in what we're doing here. And you want us to make it better. So really consider that part of your generosity is giving that feedback. Okay. So with that said, I will offer here our dedication of merit, which we do every time, recognizing that so much of the good that may be generated here in this space for you individually, perhaps interpersonally here with this room, this virtual room, let it not be held closely to us, but rather in turn offered out into this aching world. We can soothe and enjoy and heal, but then best if we also offer that as a dedication of merit out into the world with this prayer. May all places be held sacred, all places. May all beings be cherished. May all injustices of oppression, devaluation, and theft be fully righted, remedied, and healed. May all wounds to forests, rivers, deserts, oceans, all wounds to Mother Earth be lovingly restored to bountiful health. May all beings everywhere delight in whale song and bird song and blue sky. May all beings abide in peace and well-being, awaken and be free. Thank you, friends. Thank you, Kritee. Thank you, Kritee, for your generosity today. Thank you all for coming. You contribute to the spirit of Sangha when you show up here. So truly from the bottom of my heart,